Bibles to Genesis 29. Boy, we're gonna move on some text this morning. We're gonna read together verses 12 through 25, and turn the screen on. We'll do that here in just a moment. Pull up the screen. What's that? Before we read, let me make a few opening comments. There are certain elements in a great story. This is a really great story. This is probably one of the most familiar stories in the scripture. And that's the old switcheroo that Uncle Laban took. What makes a story a really great story is when you read it, it evokes emotion and feeling. And this is one of those stories that does just that. And where we line up on the emotion it evokes within us tells a lot about where we are in life. Not good or bad, right and wrong, but where we are in life. And that's what we want to read it. Now, it's impossible to read this unbiased because we know the outcome of this story. We've read it several times. We've heard this story. But this morning we're going to look at it and kind of take it apart a little bit. And hopefully we can back off at maybe the 30,000 foot level and read it, in a sense, afresh this morning. So let's do just that. The setting is Haran, Jacob's arrival. Of course, we know he's been on a mission for a bride. He arrives, he has a warm encounter with Rachel, and he's welcomed by Laban, and so let's pick up at verse 12 and read 12 through 25.
He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and a son of Rebekah, so she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home, and there Jacob told him all these things.
Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be."
Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me."
So Jacob stayed 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to lie with her." So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when the evening came, he took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob. Jacob lay with her.
And Laban gave the servant girl Zilpah to his daughter as her maidservant. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?"
Wow.
You got 3 more verses.
No, that's
Yeah,
it.
I love that.
Yeah. No, I stopped there purposely. I wanted to end with the phrase, "Why have you deceived me?"
So were they just operating in the dark or something?
Well, we'll get into that. Of course, we read it, you know, guys, we've been tuned to read the Holy Scriptures with reverence, which we should, but guys, there is so much going on in here. It's hard for me to read this with a straight face with what is going on here. This is like something out of a sitcom. 3 sections, the flow. I'd like to drill into it a little bit. The flow is 12 through 19 is the first section. 12 through 19 represents the initial meeting, the deal, the emotion, the background, the players, if you will, in this story. So, what are some of the key words? I'm going to write those down in this little list. What do you see as some of the key words that show maybe this story that build this story to what it is, to the punch that's going to happen here in a little bit? What are some of the key words that you see? What stands out to you?
He was a relative.
Yeah, Rebecca's son.
What's that?
That he was Rebecca's son.
Right, he's a nephew, so he's a relative, and of course, so that puts what type of familial relationship does Rachel have with Jacob? They're cousins, and of course, in our culture, in our day, we cousins don't marry cousins, but evidently that was not an issue at that time, and rather than going down that whole trail, let's just accept that as it is, and it is what it is. So we know that they're relatives, okay?
Well, the term "you are my flesh and blood" is what Laban puts upon him.
And what is that? What is he saying there?
It sounds like confidence. You are my flesh and blood. You can trust me, and we're family.
There you go, flesh and blood. You are my flesh and blood, implying trust. That fair? Okay.
Maybe he was saying, "You're my flesh and blood, sucker."
Okay, well, we know where you're going to line up on this whole thing. So, okay, I'm just going to write flesh and blood is a key, is a key phrase there, and
I think
it implies. Excuse me, Bill. Just a moment. I can do one thing at a
I
time.
understand. I don't want
I don't want to lose. Flesh and blood implies trust. I think that's true. Okay, Bill.
Well, it's kind of like you. You had that one guy, and you were ready to turn your company over to somebody so you can move on. I think he sees a partner, a takeover for his flocks and herds, his agricultural.
Oh, his exit plan?
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least there's continuity. It's my family's going to be here, my kids will be here, my grandkids will be here. Great, I've got my plan.
Okay, so put that into, what is that telling us about the story or about Laban's frame of reference here? What do you think that is telling us?
He cares. There's a continuity in the family. I don't know how to put it.
Okay, is it? Do you feel this is something that he's interpreting as positive to can kind of help his cause?
Yeah.
Is that how, so? It's kind of self-focused.
Laban thinks this is a good deal. He's going to suck.
Okay, so you're saying Laban thinks this is a good deal.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to write Laban. I'm going to write, just because I'm short on space, Laban, to Laban's benefit.
Yeah. Put a plus sign or something.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Laban plus, okay, Laban's plus. This is something, Bill's saying this is something, Laban is seeing this as something that is going to benefit the cause of Laban. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
His wording kind of looks that way. You're a relative. Do you think you should work for me for nothing? That's a question. It's
How does yours read? I'm curious.
This is an NIV, and it says, "Just because you're a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing?" He's saying, I should pay you, but at the same time, unless you don't want me to. It's just almost one of those things that it doesn't need to be a question form. You're a relative, but I need to pay you, could have been said. But just because you're a relative, should you work for nothing?
Okay, so how do you interpret that? What is the core of that statement? What's behind that?
Family helping family,
What's that?
family helping family, that's kind of a given.
If you work for nothing, you also can walk away. When you start making a contract for salary, you become
Interesting.
obliged. I think Laban's trying to tie him down.
Okay, how about, do you think that?
I mean, I
Well,
don't,
to a point, yeah. This, pointing out your flesh and blood, should you work for nothing? If somebody said that to you, you would immediately think, well, they really want me to do this for nothing. That'd be my-
Really?
that'd be
Well,
my look
I
at it.
shouldn't, yeah, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know, idealistically, I'm just thinking Laban feels like he needs to compensate him in some way.
Okay, so we have two,
But Laban
I would
also
say we have
really
two
needed his
different
daughters
perspectives on that.
married.
What's that?
That's the big deal over there. He needed his daughters married too. I don't think he was without thinking, hey, you
This
know,
might be just
I'm
something.
setting this up here. He doesn't really have a dowry with him. I think he's maybe thinking maybe I can get one of my daughters hooked up here.
who's harder to hang on to, a salaried employee or a volunteer?
Volunteer.
Yeah.
I think that's just it here. I mean, as long as Jacob's a volunteer, I don't know if Laban has any way of holding him down.
So I sense from what you're saying, Bill, is you're looking at this, because you know that, we all know the end of the story, what he's gonna do. And I sense from your responses, he's actually strategizing at this early in the game to close a deal.
Keep going on.
Well, he's already observed the attractiveness between the two,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
knows
and
this
Rachel,
is-
so it's like, maybe we can work something out here.
Okay. All right.
It was an opportunity to make sure that both of his daughters were rightfully taken care of. I mean, this was a big deal in that day and age. You just didn't want your daughter going someplace with a heathen. You know, you wanted to be a believer. You know, that's
Yeah.
important to us today too. You know, we want our children to hook up with a believer.
Yeah.
And so we would probably be open to arrangement, you might say, but, you know, he was tricked.
So do you feel he was, what's the general consensus? Do you feel he's strategizing here? Is he
If I
stra-
hadn't read the end of the story, I might not feel that.
Right.
That's-
So, on the surface, to me, it looks good, you know?
And what's
The
good?
laborer is worthy of
Yeah.
his hire.
I think what's,
But knowing more about Laban makes me think, yeah, there's an agenda behind this.
it's impossible for us to not think that because we know the end of the story. But by your responses, this is how I'm hearing the responses. You know the end of the story, so you're naturally trying to, like Bill is trying to reconcile Laban's actions and putting them in context to the end result. Is that not? I mean, that's natural.
Yeah.
But I'm asking the question, I think Steve asked the question, if we were to read this for the first time, how would we look at this? How would Laban's action be interpreted if we didn't know the end of the story? There's a time that you didn't know the end of the story, and how would you have read it at that time? Yes.
Well, if we put ourselves in the position that they were in and the traditions that they're in, what he's saying over here is true. Laban has got these daughters that he wants to get. These are merchandise in all actuality.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways.
Jesus Christ paid the greatest price for his bride, the church. this is a picture of that, and Laban has got these two treasures, and he's got a guy about the right age that looks like a customer. blood and flesh and blood or not, he could be a good customer.
So we're kind of lining up with opportunity. What would be the other strategy, opportunity? On one side, that's easy because we know the end of the story. But what would be the other, if we were just to read this for the first reading? What is, I mean, a simple reading of the text?
You have, in those days you needed a dowry. He's given Jacob the chance to get his daughter. I mean, you don't just give your daughter and he takes her and leaves. He says, okay, I'll let you have my daughter, but here's the deal. You work, you get my daughter. And he's got to make Jacob happy.
This is opportunity, yes?
Yeah. I mean, Jacob's got to be pleased with this.
Yeah. You know, it's funny too with the reading of the text regarding the daughters. The core idea is there is a contrast being stated in the statement. When I learned this text, when I was taught this text, the contrast was very far. The teacher said, well, Leah had weak eyes, and that means she was cross-eyed. She was cross-eyed. And so for years and years, I've interpreted this as she had a wandering eye. Well, so I actually looked at this afresh this time. I've always had this image in the back of my head that Leah had a wandering eye. And of course, in the dark, you couldn't see. It was very dark. You didn't see the wandering eye.
Veils.
I mean, that's that whole thing that we're going to get to is just so funny. But I actually kind of delved into it. There's no interpreter of this text that says, and Leah had a wandering eye. That's not there. But that's the way I was taught. But they do vary with she had poor eyes. But we're in the context, in the text, it's about the looks, how they were being perceived. One interpretation, this is where I've lined up now I've put the other wandering eye aside, and this is how I've lined up. I've interpreted this is weak can also mean tender. And so where a lot of translators are lining up was this way. Leah had tender, beautiful eyes. However, Rachel was a knockout.
The whole package.
The whole package. Her form means her body. She was a babe. She was a knockout. Leah had tender, beautiful eyes. Contrast, Rachel was a knockout. That's where I've landed on that one.
Can you imagine, we talk about being all hot to get married in the wedding night after a year or so. 7 years you've got to look at her.
As being a knockout.
Yeah, just watching this like 7 years, she's going to start getting old.
Well, notice, okay, the 7 years pass as a day because he's so excited about this deal and the prize. And we'll end with this. We're actually going to pick this up next week because there's an activity I want us to do and have some fun with. But what's the phrase he uses in verse 21? How, after the 7 years have been completed, 7 years passed, verse 20, 7 years passed in one verse, and now it's 7 years later. How does he address Uncle Laban? What does he say?
Give her to me, I'll
Give me my wife.
Yeah, give me my wife. That's new in the text. I have completed the obligation. Give me my wife. Right? We'll end there. We'll pick up next week.
So who has the sacred pen?
right here.
Oh, good.